The protocols we discussed today can reduce your risk of premature death by 50 to 70%, boost your memory retention by 40%, cut your risk of type 2 diabetes by 29%, and lower your LDL cholesterol by 15 to 20%. They can also improve your longevity by 23%, while increasing your metabolism and even physically growing your brain by 4 to 5%. These are not just numbers, they're life-changing benefits, and they are all within reach. Let's dive into the science behind these incredible results and how you can make them more. Now, let me just start by saying that to replicate the benefits of the protocols we're going to dive into today, you would need about 15 prescription drugs, and the total annual cost for those around $20,000 per person. So, and that could even be higher just depending on brand name drugs, advanced therapies. It does not include additional costs of managing side effects or associated medical appointments. But luckily, obviously, you're not going to need to spend these because we've developed a system that will get you those results for free. And it's called the L5 method. And if you guys have been listening to the last few episodes, we have kind of been, I don't want to say beating a dead horse, but there has been a very recurring theme of moving the big rocks. So there are all these sexy therapies coming out, especially with longevity being the trend. You're seeing all the biohackers, the 15,000 pills that they take every single day, buying all the red lights, doing all the things. And not to say that those things can't be beneficial. Like there's some data behind some of those. But if you're not moving the big rocks, if you're not what we call the L5 method, if you don't have practices that you're doing daily for those things, you're walking around $100 bills for literally pennies. Because everything that I just said is going to be encapsulated by the simplest routines that we're going to break down even further. So that's why, we're not beating the dead horse, but we're going to give you some sexy facts because what we do isn't necessarily sexy. Doing things the right way, being consistent with those things isn't necessarily sexy. So today we're going to make it sexy.
I feel like that's probably our biggest challenge as business owners in what we do is like trying to help people understand, like, listen, these things, these basics are going to impact your life so greatly. But when you compare marketing these basics to marketing the biohacking tools and techniques that you see everywhere right now, it's really hard. And that's probably going to be forever our biggest struggle. However, I feel like the more people we coach and get in the app and listening to this podcast and listening to our message, the easier it is to spread it because you guys are also helping us spread it. So just wanted to say thank you first and foremost, because it is a struggle for us, especially when we're competing with all of these fancy things that attract people. Right. They're flashy. They attract people right off the bat versus listening to us talk about stress or sleep or training or nutrition.
Yeah, if you think about all of the things, if you're listening to this and you think about all the things that you've tried in the past, whether that was like some sort of diet program or fad diet or training program, ask yourself what caught your eye about those things. It probably wasn't sustainability, stress management. It was probably like, hey, we can get you these results in this amount of time and we're going to make it simple. You just got to cut out all your favorite foods. And people are like, yeah, that's great. That should be restrictive enough to get me results. And you think about what people have bought into in the past, and it's usually something that seems really flashy and extreme because people like extremes. No one loves to be in the messy middle. And we're like, hey, we're over here, middle ground, nuance, compromise, big rocks. And you're right, it's not as sexy, but it sure as hell works.
And here's the thing. I mentioned the costs, right? So upwards of $20,000 a year to hit on some of the things that I talked about as far as benefits. There are people who would rather take those 15 pills, injections, and spend the $20,000 per year versus doing the simple things that you can do every single day that are free. And to an even greater extent, so let's say someone doesn't have that kind of, financial freedom. Some would still suck it up and find a way to pay $1,000, $2,000 a year, a month, $2,000 a month that people would spend on peptides because, I haven't been able to do this. I want to fix that. we can do those things with the simplest little shifts. So just a quick plug, our coaching does not cost that much. So you can save a ton of money, and we'll walk you through this stuff as far as creating these sustainable changes. But protocols, L5 method, what is it for the new listeners? Those are the 5 pillars of health that we have come up with at Levolution. So training, nutrition, mindset, movement, and habits. For the sake of this episode, the habit that I plugged in to get the benefits on, that's going to be meditation. So stick with us. We're going to go through these. We're going to give you the sexy stats. We're going to make sure you know why these things are so important, so that if you are like, oh, I kind of know I should be doing these things, but you're not regularly, like, here's your motivation. Here's that sexy encapsulation for you. So diving in, some basics here. Enhancing cognitive function and memory. So when it comes to sleep, so sleep will consolidate memories, improve retention of skills and information learned throughout the day. We're talking about a 40% reduction in memory retention in sleep-deprived people versus well-rested individuals. So right off the bat, throw out your nootropic or however you pronounce that if you're not getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night. And those things alone, those are expensive. I don't know if you guys have looked into those. You can spend $60 a month on these little pills that supposedly make you focus a little bit better. But 40% increase just by getting yourself some quality sleep. Now, boosting physical performance. Deep sleep triggers the release of growth hormone, so HGH, essential for muscle repair and recovery. It's also going to increase testosterone. To give you guys some context, just 1 week of 5 hours of sleep per night can reduce testosterone levels by 10 to 15%, which is comparable to aging 10 to 15 years, which is insane. And a lot of people thrive on that. Oh, I don't need sleep. I'm going to go spend $500 a month on supplements, and maybe I'm already on TRT. But if you just get that to 6 hours, to 7 hours, work it up slowly. Don't worry about binge watching throughout the night, and just get to bed on time. Talking about 15 years. Athletes who sleep 8+ hours show a 9% increase in sprint performance and accuracy in sports like tennis and basketball. So just talking about specific tangible things that, why do athletes focus so much on the basics? Athletes are the masters of this stuff. So for those of us, or, us common folk who are skipping over these, but we want all the benefits, like the people who make the most money in the world when it comes to athletic performance, like, they're going to bed at 8 o'clock and they're getting 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep every night. A few more we'll jump into, and then we'll kind of pass the ball around a little bit and go through practices. But regulating mood and mental health. So quality sleep lowers cortisol levels, helps manage stress and anxiety. People with chronic insomnia are 10 times more likely to develop depression. So for those of you who are on antidepressants, looking for ways to get off, it all comes back to the basics. Enhancing immune function. So the sleep obviously strengthens the immune system, helping the body fight off infections. People who sleep fewer than 6 hours per night are actually 4 times more likely to catch a cold compared to those sleeping 7+ hours. We'll pause here and we can pass the ball around, but I want to jump in on that specifically. I just got crushed with probably the flu. I don't know what it was, 105 fever. I attribute that to sleep being off for like a few days around that. And it was off pretty significantly. I've been pretty good about managing sleep. Work's been nuts. I've had a little bit of a weird schedule with it. But the week prior, I was banking on going this entire winter sick season. I was going a whole year without getting sick at all. I felt great. I was cruising. Best I felt in such a long time. Literally a week, probably less than a week of my sleep being off. And I got cracked. 105 fever, down for the count. Like, I've been in a brain fog for the last couple of weeks. This is like my first few days where I feel normal again. But the little things like this, you guys are tired of being sick, you're tired of feeling down, and all the little things, like, it starts with sleep.
And listen, we are all parents here. We understand you're not going to have perfect sleep every single night, especially if you are a parent of young kids. But even if you're not, like, there's going to be things that interrupt your sleep, of course. Our mission in talking about sleep and making this such a priority, both in our own lives and for our clients and listeners here, is so that you can get or put yourself in a position to get the best possible sleep, even if you do get woken up overnight, even if things aren't perfect. So that starts, in my opinion, with looking at your wind down routine, your bedtime routine at night, and how you wake up in the morning. Like, those two things are going to impact what happens in the middle there overnight. We talked about this recently on one of the episodes. I shared my nighttime routine, and it's simple things, right? So cleaning up the kitchen, having my magnesium before bed, washing my face, getting like ready, not scrolling my phone for hours. We try not to watch TV for hours before bed. We try to replace that with reading a book or just doing something that's actually allowing your body to relax and wind down. And those basic things honestly set me up for really great success when it comes to falling asleep and staying asleep.
Great success. Every time you say it, I'm going to do that.
Every time.
Every time.
I was also going to say, Josh, similar to how you mentioned with a little bit lower sleep, you ended up sick. Both times that I have been postpartum, I have gotten like early postpartum, I have gotten rocked. Now, obviously I have a child in daycare, and so that there's a piece of that there. But the two postpartum experiences I had when sleep is very low and like you're not even up to the sleep training era yet, like baby's up, you're nursing several times a night, whatever, like RSV, flu, COVID, shingles. Shingles was my last straw before I was like, we're sleep training now. I'm like 27 and got shingles. I've never heard of someone under 70 getting shingles, but you have this mass, like shingles, they say can be essentially like chickenpox virus, right? That's dormant until there is like a mass stress response and you kind of like reactivate that virus. You don't get it really from someone else. So that was like my last straw. I was like, I'm 7 months postpartum. The baby's not sleeping. I have shingles. We're sleep training now. Damn it. Like that. It's so funny that was my last straw, but it was like, I cannot take another sickness. Like I cannot do this anymore. I need to sleep. And we were all so much better for it. But all of that to say, when sleep is low, immune function is low.
There was a period where you guys were lucky to go 2 weeks without something. It was crazy.
If we went like a week or two, we were celebrating. And knock on wood, all the not, I don't even want to say it. Never mind. Josh's superstitions rubbing off on me. Never mind.
See?
You can just assume what I'm going to say, but I'm not going to say it because I'm not even going to put it out there. Yep.
Don't even
Carry
put
on.
it out there.
But I think the other really big key here, at least for us, like it's been a noticeable difference, is when we take our morning walks, like first thing once the kids get up, and we take our evening walks typically during sunset, depending on the time of year, but even in summer, it's usually later. Viewing sunlight and getting sunlight in those hours, even in the winter, even in the cloudy days, like I notice such a difference when we do that versus when we don't. And I notice it in our kids too. Like there was a couple days last week where it was just brutally cold, and Cora Kai can handle it. Cora, she really can't. Like she's in a phase where she's ripping her gloves off right now.
Kai is my cold warrior.
He is. He'll go play out in like negative temperatures and he's fine. But we skipped a couple days.
Gloves.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's not about it. So we skipped a couple days of her morning walk, and there were a couple days last week where I looked on the monitor and she was definitely awake earlier than she usually is. She was having a harder time falling asleep at night. So I do notice like it does play a pretty significant role when we skip those things. But I do love how that's such an easy thing that you can implement into your routine. And it doesn't have to be this extensive like 30-minute walk. What is it, like 5 minutes, I think?
It's 10. It's all of 10.
10. Still 10 minutes. If you
That
get
quick
outside.
little like neighborhood loop you guys do?
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
a
that's
quick little neighborhood walk.
Yeah.
And it's something where, we obviously enjoy the other benefits of it too, of like getting our steps in and being together as a family. But the sunlight aspect of it truly does impact everybody's ability to sleep well.
I probably
would even
look like
say
such a...
last week-
Go ahead, Joel.
You guys had, you mentioned the same thing, Alessandra, like you guys had super cold weather like the last week or two, and here too. And the school, normally like Sloan's daycare or preschool, whatever, they normally go outside and they're like, pack their hats and their gloves and whatever. Like we still do outside recess, but I think if it's like under 30 degrees, maybe they don't go outside. There's some sort of like legal limit. And I think it's under 30, and it's been like 15, 20 degrees the last week or two. And so they haven't been outside. And all week last week when I was picking up Sloan, I would be like, how'd the day go? And the teacher was like, this week has just been so rough, because she wasn't saying because we can't get outside, but I was like, I think it has to do with the fact that they haven't been able to like get outside. And I was like, what's going on? Like usually I know it's been cold, so you can't go out, but sometimes you guys like go into the gym or something, if, you know, so they could get their energy out if you can't go outside. And she was like, well, you know, it's tough when we go into the gym because there's another toddler class in there too. And then it's 2 crazy toddler classes and it's just like really crazy in there. And I'm like, I get that. I do totally get that. But also, it's either they're going to be crazy in your classroom because they can't move their bodies, or they're going to be crazy in the gym where like it's a safer-ish place to do that. And she was like, no, you're right. Whatever. We talked about that. But I think there was a piece of the movement, like them not getting their normal movement outside and their playtime outside. And B, the same thing with sleep and like sun exposure and getting some fresh air. And they'd, you know, normally they come back in from outside, like they take naps. And she's like, yeah, like Sloane's not really taking her nap. It's been a tough like listening week for everyone. And guess what? When Sloane came home, I said, why do you think you had so much trouble listening at school today? And you know what? Exactly verbatim what she said to me. I just really wanted to move my body, Mom. And I literally think that was her way of being like, I have so much energy that like I have nowhere to put it. And now I'm having trouble like sitting still, listening, doing what I need to do because I need to like move my body. I just thought it was so interesting that she vocalized that.
Kai said something similar because they haven't been going outside for recess because it's been so cold. And he said that like he didn't like school or something last week. And I was like, why didn't you like school today? Or like, what happened? And he's just like, you know, he's like, we had indoor recess. He's like, I hate when we do that. And it makes sense. Like that's how he was projecting it. But it had everything to do with not moving their bodies and not getting outside. And I'm sure if you're a teacher listening to this, you probably can relate that your students were going haywire when you have indoor recess, but it makes sense when you think about it that way.
All right, I'm going to jump back in with a few more fun facts. I think these are super interesting. So if you guys have been looking for the motivation, like here it is, then we'll wrap up sleep. But next one, improving longevity. So reducing all-cause mortality. Poor sleep has been linked to a 12% increase in all-cause mortality, while sleeping 7 to 8 hours per night lowers that risk significantly. When it comes to heart health, short sleep is associated with a 48% higher risk of coronary heart disease and 15% increased risk of stroke. So you talk about what most people are prescribed drugs for. Like these are two of the heavy hitters. They're some of the, what do they call them? What's Peter Attia call them? Not the big horseman, not the headless horseman. It's like the 4 horsemen of death. This is one of them. So just sleeping, talking about a 48% decrease in that risk, just getting it back to baseline when it comes to coronary heart disease. Now, when it comes to healthy weight management, a lot of you guys are on that weight loss journey at the moment. Sleep balances leptin and ghrelin. So those are hormones that control hunger and fullness. So when you wake up, like short sleep and you're always craving these things, like that's a big component of that. So people sleeping, to give you guys some numbers, less than 5 hours are 50% more likely to become obese than those sleeping 7 to 8 hours. Now, to give you guys some mechanisms in regards to this, what's happening, sleep deprivation reduces glucose metabolism by up to 30%, impairing the ability to burn calories effectively. Now, some more chronic disease facts. Diabetes.
You also have, I'm going to jump in there for a second too, in terms of weight gain and low sleep. There is, yes, a glucose metabolism piece of it. Like the less sleep we get, the more insulin resistant we can become. When that is combined with stress, it's like high stress, low sleep is a recipe for bad insulin sensitivity, or what we would say is insulin resistance. But the other piece that I was going to add about the leptin and ghrelin is that when we get poor sleep, we have lower satiety hormone and higher hunger hormone. So higher ghrelin, lower leptin, which means we are hungrier and less satisfied by what we eat, because if we didn't get sleep, the body is trying to get energy from somewhere. So you might notice on the days that you don't sleep well, you're hungrier, you have more cravings, and then that can obviously contribute to overeating. But
now, what happens when you combine that with a poor diet? So you're craving all these things, you're always hungry, you're never feeling fully satisfied, and to multiply that, you're consuming highly processed foods, which naturally don't fill you.
Yeah, you're not craving broccoli. Let's be real.
No. So you're talking about an exponential increase in overall calories. circling back to chronic diseases, poor sleep increases insulin resistance, raising the risk of type 2 diabetes by 33%. And then for those who just want to look younger, our Botox crew over here, sleep enhances collagen production, reducing wrinkles, improving skin elasticity. People sleeping fewer than 5 hours per night develop dark circles and wrinkles much more rapidly than those sleeping 7 to 8 hours. Emotional IQ. Quality sleep improves emotional regulation, reducing irritability and enhancing communication. Sleep-deprived individuals are 60% more likely to misinterpret others' emotions, leading to conflict. A little more diving back into the hormone health a little bit. Sleep, we talked about boosting testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, key hormones for reproductive health. Men with poor sleep can also see up to a 15% lower sperm count and motility. So for those who are struggling with, fertility issues, another very simple place to start. And when it comes to overall healthy aging, longevity, quality sleep reduces the buildup of amyloid plaques, decreasing the risk of Alzheimer's by up to 45%. So sleeping well in your 30s and 40s, this isn't just something you're focusing on later, it can reduce your biological age by as much as 3 to 5 years. So I know we're blasting through a ton of fun facts, guys, and it might feel a little bit all over the place. We're going to try to circle back to the application of everything, but we've talked about some of these things on dozens of episodes. And the point on this is just to give you guys some of the, a little more of that edge. Like, why am I doing it? I know I need to do it, but these are some ridiculous numbers. We're not talking about 3%, 5%, 7%. We're talking about 40, 50, 60%, and we're just on sleep at this point. So massive things, massive impact on some massive overall health markers. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. Just going through this and prepping for this episode, I thought this was really fun. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. The next one we're going to dive into is our training pillar, so resistance training. Now, some pretty obvious ones. Building and preserving muscle mass. Obviously, resistance training stimulates muscle protein synthesis, which is our foundation for increasing strength, building muscle mass. Adults actually lose 3 to 8% of muscle mass per decade after age 30, but regular resistance training can halt or even reverse this decline. So it doesn't have to be a given. Oftentimes, we talk about settling for normal. Normal is not optimal. That's just the normal trend. It doesn't have to be. If we continue to remain active, we continue to do these things, we can reverse certain issues. So don't ever feel like you got to throw in the towel. There's always a way forward. Enhancing metabolic health. So we're burning more calories when we have more muscle. Muscle is metabolically active. Resistance training increases resting metabolic rate by up to 7%, helping with that long-term fat loss. So this isn't just about eating in a caloric deficit. It's not about, hopping on the treadmill every single day. It's about the well-rounded approach, and muscle mass has a huge, huge impact on that. Improving bone density, reducing fracture risk, stronger bones, weight bearing, exercise stimulates bone remodeling, increasing density and osteoporosis. Resistance training can also increase bone mineral density by up to 3% in just 6 months. And then, down the road, when we get older, it's going to reduce the risk of falls and fractures, potentially up to 30 to 50% in older adults. Boosting insulin sensitivity and preventing diabetes. So resistance training increases glucose uptake. So combining this with sleep, guys, we're already seeing a huge improvement here when it comes to improving blood sugar control. In just 12 weeks of resistance training, you can lower your HbA1c by 0.5 to 1%, which is actually a significant reduction in people with diabetes. It's massive. So we're also going to couple this with the movement pillar here in a few minutes, but that's a big one. But if you guys want to jump in, we'll pause here. General application.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Jen.
I mean, in terms of resistance training, I think that, and maybe this is changing now. It's hard. I don't know if you guys feel like this too. Sometimes I think something is changing, like the way we're talking about something or like what we're seeing. And then I'll talk to Brant about it, who does not work in fitness. And he's like, that is not like, I'll be like, oh yeah, now people are talking more about like strength training and muscle. And he'll be like, no, they're not. They are in your they are in your little echo chamber of like fitness Instagram, but in the outside world, people are not in the loop about strength training. So he always kind of like brings me down as not brings me down, but like brings me into reality of like outside of our fitness bubble, what people are saying, doing, struggling with. And I think for a long time, we've talked about before, when you enter, let's say, a deficit, you don't want your deficit to be too steep because you don't want to lose muscle. You don't want to slash too many calories because you don't want to lose muscle. You want to make sure that you're strength training so you don't lose muscle. And I remember when my goal mid eating disorder was just to be as skinny as humanly possible. I was like, who gives a shit if I lose muscle? Like, so what? So what? Like, if my deficit is big, great, I'll lose more weight. If some of that comes from muscle, so what? And so I want to speak to, for a minute, the benefit of resistance training. There are many benefits of resistance training, but the main benefits come from adding muscle to your body, or most of the benefits, I would say. Even if you didn't add muscle, resistance training would still be helpful. But it's the muscle on your body that is helping to improve insulin sensitivity, lowering the risk of type 2 diabetes, lowering the risk of heart disease, improving your bone density, reducing the risk of dementia, improving your mental health. Part of that is because of the muscle that you've added to your body, reducing the risk of certain cancers. Like, the mechanism itself of resistance training, yes, is helpful, but it is the muscle on your body that becomes so incredibly protective for your health, immune function, metabolic function, lifespan, memory, respiratory health, of course, activities of daily living, like balance, coordination. You think about, I love those videos on Instagram. I've seen a few of them lately where they take like someone in their 80s or like have you seen these, Josh? Like 80, 85 years old, and they show someone like bringing in their groceries.
Yes, I know what
like
you're talking
putting
about.
away dishes, and they show almost like what the 85-year-old can do if they have been exercising and have some muscle versus the 85-year-old who has never strength trained or like doesn't currently, and how differently they move, or how much slower or quicker they move, or how much more balance and coordination they have. And it's like, that's the point. So when you sit there saying like, who cares if I lose some muscle? That's a really big deal. And I want to say that too, because I know that's something that is part of the conversation with the GLPs, which is, of course, a whole other conversation. But you hear like negative potential impact of GLP-1 meds. Make sure you're strength training, make sure you're eating enough protein, because you risk losing muscle. And again, to those people who are like, I just want to be skinny, I just want to lose weight, you don't want to be losing muscle. It's very, very important that you are retaining as much muscle, if not gaining as much muscle as you possibly can. It is quite literally your insurance policy. And that does not mean that nothing can ever go bad if you have muscle. My dad's a jacked bodybuilder. He still got cancer. Okay. But his cancer outcomes were likely much, much better. His spinal surgery outcomes were likely much, much better because he has muscle, because he strength trains. That's why I like to say, it's like your insurance policy, not that nothing can go wrong, but that you will come out of it better than someone who is not strength training and does not have a decent amount of muscle.
You just look around like in daily life. I haven't seen those videos. I see the videos of like parents and like, oh, how is this functional fitness? And they'll do a deadlift, and then they're lifting groceries off the ground, and then like a weird movement, and like but not the old stuff. But
I'll find one of those. They're cute.
Find that one. But you just look in daily life, like the older individuals who are super skinny, and they're like, I don't want to say keeled over, but they got like the hunchback coming in, and they can barely move. Exactly, yeah. So you see that on one side of the spectrum, and then you see a larger, I don't mean like overweight, but like someone who held on to some muscle mass, and they're moving around. They're still in the gym. They're just more lively. They're 70, 80, 85 years old, but they're still like engaged in life, versus those who are literally withering away. It's, if you don't use it, you lose it. This is kind of the actual application there. It's not for your sex life. It's for just your life in general.
It makes me think of, my mom's probably going to be mad that I'm sharing this story. I didn't get her permission, but she listens to the podcast. So if you're listening, sorry, Mom. But I think it's a good example. She slipped in the shower a couple weeks ago, and my mom is very fit. She is a fitness instructor. She has muscle. She's in her mid to late 50s. But she slipped, and she literally her feet went up in the air. She went straight down and fell out of the shower, trying to get into the shower. Ouch. But she walked away with maybe a little bruise on her butt, and that was it. And I just think about how that could have looked
That could have
if
been a
she did
broken
not
hip.
have,
Yep.
right. It could have
Yep.
been literally broke her leg. So just another example of the importance of taking care of your body, especially as you get older, and building as much muscle as possible. And I feel like for me, like when I think about when I started exercising, similar to you, Joelle, like late teens, early 20s, it was always about like getting skinny for summer and like training for my summer body and like more short-term goals. And as I got into my late 20s and now early to almost mid 30s, it's more so about training for my old lady body though. Like yes, I do want to feel really good and look good right now, but it's also that bigger term, longer term picture of like, okay, I'm doing this for now, but also doing this for later too. And I think that mindset switch really does play a big role in just how consistent you are when it comes to doing these things in the gym versus just doing them for more of that short-term aesthetic goal, if that makes sense.
I don't want to spend retirement in a chair. Like I want to travel the world. I want to play volleyball on the beach. I want to do all the fun things and like still be thriving. So I know it's that delayed gratification, that far off goal, but I want to look good now. I want to feel great like until I die. I want to feel great until my body says we're out. Peace.
I think a lot about, and this is maybe very futuristic, but same concept. Like I think a lot about my grandkids, like my future grandkids, when my girls have babies, and that like I want to be able to help them with their kids. And I watch my parents get up and off the floor and climb around the playground with them. And I'm like, I love that they can both do that, but that's because they both take care of themselves and go to the gym and have been going to the gym for decades.
No doubt. A few more fun facts and we'll keep cruising, guys. So resistance training also enhances cardiovascular health. It's going to help lower your blood pressure, improve cholesterol, decrease inflammation. Studies show a 15% reduction in the risk of heart attack or stroke with consistent resistance training. A lot of these are going to be based on like 2 to 3 days per week, guys, just for a general consistency metric there. It's also going to increase longevity. Preserving muscle mass through resistance training is linked to a 23% lower risk of all-cause mortality. Resistance training reduces oxidative stress and improves mitochondrial function, slowing biological aging. Mental health benefits and cognitive function. Resistance training actually increases levels of brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, enhancing memory and learning. People who engage in regular resistance training experience a 20% reduction in symptoms of depression and anxiety. Now, we talk all the time about the 5 pillars of health, the L5 method. They ebb and flow into each other. One is no more important than the next. When we talk about ebbing and flowing into each other, that's not just for like your your fitness specific goals. It's overall health. So a lot of these things we talked about, 15% here, 20% there, those are individual. And yet you start adding those things together. The compilation of all those coming together is so significant. And those are the heavy hitting numbers we gave you off the top, as far as 50 to 70% improvements in some crazy areas. So again, sleeping well, training hard, getting in the gym. We're talking about, I don't want to say cure, but we're moving in a great direction when it comes to reducing symptoms of depression and anxiety. Now, when it comes to supporting overall healthy aging, strength training maintains functional abilities, reducing the risk of disability in older adults. Resistance training is going to help reduce the risk of sarcopenia. So that's that age-related muscle loss by up to 50%. So we're talking about slowing that trend or reversing that trend, halting it, just getting in the gym a few days a week. Promoting hormonal health, resistance training does increase testosterone levels, especially in compound movements like squats and deadlifts. A single resistance training session can actually increase testosterone levels by 15 to 25% for up to 48 hours. Now, ebbing and flowing back into sleep quality. Resistance training is going to improve sleep duration and reduce insomnia symptoms. People who engage in regular resistance training report a 19% improvement in sleep efficiency compared to sedentary adults. HRV, you guys have probably seen this in your Aura app for those of you who have the ring, but resistance training improves HRV. It's a marker of heart health and stress management, and that can be anywhere from 22% reduction. It can be up to a 22% reduction in cardiovascular disease risk just based on the HRV improvements from strength training. and improving sexual health. So performance in libido. Strength training improves circulation. It boosts energy, enhances confidence in intimate relationships. This is partly due to the increase in nitric oxide production, which improves blood flow and reduces those ED symptoms by up to 30%. So for those of you who are paying for that little blue pill, you might not need it. Get to the gym. Anything you guys want to throw in to wrap up strength training?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Please.
Do it tired.
Sponsored by Nike. All right, guys, next pillar we're diving into is movement. And for this one, we use the threshold of 7,000 to 10,000 steps per day. So if you're not there, we're talking about working up to that. Again, 10,000 has been deemed the gold standard. It's not necessarily the gold standard. You see the sharpest increase in that curve up to 7,000 steps. So just getting to that 7,000 step threshold. But starting off, people will talk about walking, moving, not being cardio, but it does improve cardiovascular health. Walking can help to lower your blood pressure, improve circulation, it reduces the risk of heart disease. So at that 10,000 step threshold, we're talking about a potential to lower systolic blood pressure by 6 to 8 mmHg. That's millimeters of mercury. Help me out, Joelle. I know we messed this up when we were putting stuff together for Project B.
And now I'm confused because what was the other one that we were confusing it with?
That's a good question. mg over dl.
Oh, yeah, that was for blood sugar.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is millimeters of mercury.
But millimeters of mercury. Yeah. So anyway, to circle back, that's going to reduce your risk of heart disease. Just that 6 to 8 mmHg can reduce the risk of heart disease by up to 31% and stroke by 20 to 40%. We're just talking about walking, guys. So this isn't even getting into the gym. This is literally getting to that 10,000 step per day threshold. That's what these numbers were on. Reducing heart disease risk 31%, stroke by 20 to 40%, which is absolutely mind-boggling that we aren't doing that.
To give some other numbers there, because I had done a podcast on this a few years ago, what they did when they looked at some of the research regarding the steps is they saw that the average sedentary person, sedentary woman specifically, averaged about 2,700 steps per day. Those who were able to bump up to 4,400 steps from 2,700 steps had a 41% reduction in mortality. And then those mortality rates progressed and improved before starting to level off at 7,500 steps. So that's why Josh is also saying it doesn't have to be 10,000 steps. That benefit kind of levels off after 7,500. 10,000, great. But the point is 25% lower than that at 7,500. That's 25% fewer than the common gold standard of 10,000. So if 10,000 is hard for you to hit, or there are some days that you can't and now you're feeling guilty about it, 7,500 could be a really great goal. But essentially the more the better up until about 7,500.
Yeah, honestly, walking is always just my go-to when I'm feeling super tired. If I do miss a gym session, I'll try to get out for an extra walk. It's also been really great for my creativity. So I recently got a walking pad, and when I start if I'm not starting my day in the gym, I'll start my day on the walking pad, and I just find my ideas are flowing better. My mind is clear when I'm working and trying to create content or whatever I'm doing. So if you are somebody who does have a sedentary job, I cannot urge you enough to go out for a quick walk if you are feeling stuck or just overwhelmed with work. It's only going to make your productivity better when it comes to what you're actually doing. So that's my little hack when I do find that I'm in a rut or just creatively I'm just lacking that, I don't really know, I'm confused about work today, whatever. I'll go out and I'll immediately have ideas flowing. It's incredible. So that's how I personally go about it. But yeah, there's probably never a scenario that you can find yourself in where a walk will not help outside.
Yeah.
We were made to move. Everything gets better when we move. And talking about movement as a pillar of health, it almost seems okay, why do you even need to say that? It's one of the most boring things we could be talking about. But I'm going to cruise through this list, And these are some of the biggest improvements, like the most significant improvements, just by getting out of that sedentary threshold. You know, you've probably heard sitting is the new smoking. Third try. Sitting is the new smoking. And these percentages, these increases in certain areas or decreases in certain areas are so significant that you're going to understand why. So getting yourself out of the desk, out of the house, get outside, just double up on some of these benefits being outside, improving your circadian rhythm, moving your body, creating these sustainable habits. These numbers are wild. So I'm going to cruise through a few more here. Reducing the risk of chronic diseases. So walking improves insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. 30 minutes a day actually reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes by 30%. When it comes to cancer, studies show that walking 7,500 to 10,000 steps per day lowers the risk of breast cancer and colon cancer by 20 to 25%. Enhancing mental health. So walking naturally releases endorphins, reduces stress, anxiety, depression, like Alessandra just talked about. When you're in a funk, just getting out and moving, you can feel that lift in 10 minutes. And using that 10-minute threshold, 10 minutes of walking can immediately boost mood, while regular walking reduces symptoms of depression by 26%. So this was comparing a slightly brisk walk with a normal walk. So a little more intensity, reducing depression symptoms by 26%. Brain health. Walking increases blood flow to the brain, reducing the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's by 40 to 50%. That is a massive number. When it comes to longevity, regular walking is directly linked to lower mortality rates. 8,000 steps per day being the threshold reduces all-cause mortality by 51%. 12,000 steps potentially reducing that by up to 65%. Metabolic health. Walking after meals improves digestion, stabilizes blood sugar levels. So there were people talking about a couple things you could do to potentially replace the benefits of metformin. So people take that to help stabilize those blood sugars. In one example, I think it was like 10 body weight squats after a meal. I think that did like an extra 25% compared to the metformin. When it comes to walking, so 15 minutes of a 50-minute walk after a meal will lower blood sugar levels by 20%. So reducing that post-meal glucose spike. Again, circling back to sleep quality, regular movement throughout the day leads to deeper, more restorative sleep. So 30 minutes daily of walking can improve sleep efficiency by 15% and reduce insomnia symptoms by 65%. So for those of you who find yourselves staring at the ceiling for half the night, 65% of you can see an improvement just by moving 30 minutes per day. Reducing stress, enhancing focus. Stanford study found that walking improves creative output by 60%. Alessandra's talking about improving that creative space by walking. Well, there's your number, 60% to actually quantify it. Boosting immune function. Moderate walking increases circulation of immune cells, reducing the risk of infections. 20 minutes per day reduces the risk of getting a cold or flu by 43%. So a lot of times we go into hibernation mode. We just talked about how cold it's been here. If you got to hop on the treadmill a couple of days while you're in that polar vortex, do that, but stick to a couple 10-minute walks a day and you're going to reduce that risk of cold or flu by 43%. More cognitive function benefits. Walking has the potential to increase your hippocampus size, which helps you improve memory and learning. So people who walk 3 times per week for 40 minutes have shown a 2% increase in hippocampal volume, counteracting brain aging by 1 to 2 years. When it comes to reducing the risk of premature death, 7,000 steps per day has been shown to reduce the risk by 50 to 70%. 50 to 70%, according to a 2021 study published in JAMA. And the last one I got for you, reducing risk of anxiety and depression relapse. So regular movement does reduce the risk of relapsing into anxiety or depression by maintaining emotional resilience. So the baseline they use for this is walking 5 times per week for 30 minutes, and that's going to decrease the risk of depression relapse by up to 50%. Anything you guys want to add to the movement sector? All right, carrying on. So one of our pillars, habit, I just chose meditation for this one, just to kind of give you guys some numbers on this episode. So first one for meditation, reducing stress and cortisol levels. Meditation reduces the activity of the amygdala, that's the brain's fear center, and regulates stress hormones. Just 10 minutes of daily meditation can reduce cortisol levels by 20 to 30%. This is not to demonize cortisol. We've talked about this in a couple episodes, guys. It has its place, especially earlier in the day, in the morning. But from a general sense, a lot of times people are struggling with high levels consistently. So this can help with that significantly. Improving focus and concentration. Regular meditation does strengthen attention span and working memory. Meditation actually improves attention by 14% after just 4 weeks. Those benefits are comparable to those gained from medication for ADHD. So again, we're talking about reducing our reliance on some of these things, and that's a very significant improvement. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think if anyone can talk about meditation, it's you. You are probably the most consistent person I've ever seen meditate every day, but also
Hang on, how many people do you watch meditate?
I'm just saying, like, I feel like a lot. I mean, even myself personally, like, I'll go through ebbs and flows with it, but I think it's hard for a lot of people to be consistent with for whatever reason. I mean, I think a big part of it is just how we live our lives in 2025. Like, we're constantly on the go and not in that mindset of like, let me sit down and do nothing and like focus on what's going on in here. But also, like, you have truly transformed your own mindset in just so many ways, and I think that has played probably the biggest role, even more than your cold exposure and cold plunges. But I just wanted to back you up as, like, if anyone can talk about meditation, it's Josh.
I just noticed a difference in how I feel. And it's in conjunction with the cold exposure. Like, since I've been sick, my readiness, like even after recovering, so the last week, my readiness score has been in the 50s and 60s, which is atrocious. Like, I'm usually hovering mid 80s to 90-ish. The only thing that I have changed has been not doing the sauna or the cold plunges, even the cold showers, because I've still felt like my body was recovering. And so if I'm putting that extra stress, like you can relapse. So I've been trying to give myself extra time, but my HRV is typically mid 60s. It's been in the 30s. My resting heart rate, my lowest is typically, well, it's different for women. Women is typically lower.
No, we're making this face because mine is super low because I'm pregnant. And Joelle and I had a conversation about her HRV.
I'm dying, apparently. I don't know. Ever since having baby 2, which I'm not so early postpartum anymore. We're like, what, almost 2 years in April? And yeah, my HRVs are, on a good day, we're in the 30s at this point, which is, yeah.
It is individual.
Yeah, they are individual. So like 80 could be really high for someone and 140 could be really high for someone. We had this conversation once in our Levolution group chat of, well, probably pre-marriage, so it might have been level 10 still. But the highest I've ever seen my HRV is probably like 80s, 90s. But like Coach Shelby, you talk to her and like a good day for her is like 170, 160 in HRVs. And like, I've never seen my HRV will never be there. So it is relative to the individual. But mine have been pretty consistently low for about 2 years now.
Well, if you just started your day with a cold shower, it would probably help get you back into the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I'd be curious if there's anything that I would see a bump in. I mean, like when I get better sleep, my HRVs are higher, like that. I can see that correlative data. I could see some correlation with my cycles and like where I am luteal phase versus follicular phase. But I've heard other things like potentially mouth tape. I'm curious if you saw a difference with that, Alessandra.
Not right now, but I mean, I think pregnancy trumps everything. But I actually just looked back to see like when my HRV started coming back up after having Cora in my Aura data, and it was about like 5 days postpartum. Like the whole end of pregnancy, I was in my 30s, which I'm pretty much at right now, and then 5 days later, it was in like high 50s, low 60s. And it's so crazy how fast it switches back after, well, for some of us, after you have a baby.
Are you now in your Aura data? Do you now have, I don't know if you've ever actually charted your Aura data to see do you know about this? The inversion point? Oh my gosh. Okay. You have to go back and look at all your Aura data now. So there is data that shows, you know how like during pregnancy, your heart rate is getting higher and your HRV is dropping. About 6 to 8 weeks prior to labor, those invert and your HRVs start increasing and your heart rate starts decreasing. So all of a sudden, like when one has been plummeting, they flop and things start getting better. Like recovery starts getting better, heart rate comes down a little bit. And whatever that like inversion point is a prediction for like, I think it's 7 weeks. I have to double check it, but I think it's 7 weeks before labor. And it was Whoop that actually recognized all of that data happening in their users and was able to put together, oh my gosh, we think we can predict labor based on, and even predict preterm labor based on when that inversion point happens for women. And so I went back and like tracked all of, when I saw that, I like went back and looked at all of my data and like put it on an Excel sheet and like tracked where the inversion point was. And I literally like predicted when I was going to have Reese.
It was true for you?
Yeah.
That would be very helpful. That would be very
both
helpful.
pregnancies. Do it. Chart it.
I feel like I
Send me
haven't
your
noticed a
data,
big
I'll do it for
difference
you.
in either of those, though. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. You gotta look. It's very interesting. But I found it to be
cool.
true.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, where were we?
I don't know.
We were
HRV?
talking about
HRVs,
HRV.
Yes, my HRVs.
Meditation. I was giving you props about meditation, and then
I know where we're at. I was just kidding.
oh,
I want to see what my HRV was.
Yeah. So I mean, my sleep has actually been decent, which is why I know something else is going on. Either I am actually dying and I'm going into some kind of heart issue, or it's been the lack of sauna and cold plunges, which I likely attribute that to. Let's see here.
28. Wow, mine's higher than yours.
What's your
today.
typical readiness score, Joelle? Like, what is your average usually?
It's usually pretty good. No.
Today it's a 77. Yesterday was a 77. I would say between 75 and 85 usually.
So that's not bad.
Get the occasional in the 60s, but I would say I'm normally in 75 to 85 range.
Yeah. So it's adjusted to your HRV. Like mine thinks I'm dying because it's so low. My resting heart rate is high, not high, but higher a little bit. My HRV is lower. So we'll see. I did my cold shower today. We're going to ease back into it. I'm feeling pretty good. But I know you are on a time crunch, so I'm going to cruise through some of these and we'll dive into our last one. All right. So the most obvious benefit is probably reducing anxiety. Studies have shown an 18 to 30% reduction in anxiety symptoms with consistent meditation practice over 8 weeks. So up to 30% in 8 weeks. I believe that 10-minute per day threshold is what they're working off there. Improving sleep quality. Meditation increases melatonin production, which reduces racing thoughts at night. Mindfulness meditation can improve sleep efficiency by 11 to 15% and reduce symptoms of insomnia by 50%. So in the last two alone, I think we've already reduced insomnia by up to 115%. So we got the fix for those struggling with sleep. Boosting immunity. Meditation boosting immunity. It actually reduces inflammation and enhances immune cell activity. Meditation increases levels of natural killer cells, which fight infections by 15 to 25%. There's also another component in this too. I don't think I touched on it with this, but shifting from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, so going into that restorative state, that's going to be a big factor here when it comes to recovery and improving immunity as well. Reducing symptoms of depression. Meditation does increase serotonin production, which is the brain's feel-good neurotransmitter. Mindfulness meditation can reduce symptoms of major depressive disorder by 20 to 30%, with effects lasting up to 6 months. Now, when it comes to brain power, meditation does promote neuroplasticity, improving learning, memory, and creativity. Long-term meditators have actually shown up to a 7.5% larger hippocampus, the brain area associated with memory. So you're talking about brain health, decreasing your brain age. Huge impact there. Overall longevity and healthy aging. Meditation, Joel, you can jump in with this one, protects telomeres, so those chromosome caps, from shortening, a key marker of biological aging. Meditation has been shown to increase, it's been shown to increase telomere activity by 33%, reducing cellular aging. So Joel, if you want to give some backstory on those telomeres.
Telomeres are like these little end caps of some of your DNA, essentially, and they get shorter as you age. And there are things that we could do, like get plenty of sleep, exercise, manage our stress, that help keep our telomeres long and can even elongate our telomeres. So anything that lengthens your telomeres or keeps them from getting shorter is helpful for, quote, anti-aging.
There you have it, folks.
Cool stuff. Yeah.
33%. That's a big biomarker.
I'd be very curious if someone, so like Alessandra, I know you have mentioned you kind of like ebb and flow with meditation, but like journaling always is I would feel like that's your meditation in a sense. I'd be very curious if we had to go like toe to toe, would journaling be any more or less beneficial than meditation? Like if someone's like, I can give 10 minutes to one of these, which do I choose? And that might just come down to preference, like whichever one you could be most consistent with and do regularly is probably what you should do. But I would just be curious from a research standpoint if either of those could be better, quote, than the other.
I am a big journal fan. So with that in context, it's an entirely different activity.
True.
I'm gonna lean meditation on that one. But I mean, as you guys are seeing, there are significant physical benefits with this quote unquote woo-woo protocol. The next one we're going to talk about is another major physical benefit. It's reducing blood pressure. So I did allude to this a minute ago. Meditation does activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which lowers blood pressure, potentially reducing systolic blood pressure by 5 to 10 mmHg, decreasing the risk of stroke by 20 to 30%. And again, we're working on that 10-minute per day threshold. Improving pain management. Mindfulness meditation can reduce chronic pain intensity by 25 to 30%, which is obviously improving quality of life for chronic pain sufferers. For those of you who are burnt out, maybe you're working from home, long hours, meditation lowers the emotional exhaustion and improves resilience in high stress environments. Regular meditation has been shown to reduce burnout symptoms by up to 40%, especially in healthcare and teaching professionals. So for those of you in those fields, it's a very powerful tool for you. This one was pretty interesting. So supporting addiction recovery. Meditation strengthens the brain's ability to resist cravings and impulsive behaviors. I would attribute that to living in the moment, to the concept of mindfulness and kind of being able to reduce these exterior factors and their influence. That's what we talk about with emotional reactivity. So mindfulness training does reduce substance use relapse by 20 to 30%. Cardiovascular health, we touched on a little bit with blood pressure, but it also actually reduces arterial inflammation. So people who meditate are 48% less likely to develop heart disease over the long term. When it comes to gray matter in the brain, MRI scans have actually shown a 4 to 5% increase in gray matter volume in meditators over 8 weeks. And that gray matter density is linked to learning, memory, emotional regulation. So all the things we've kind of overlapped here to this point on. And just as far as a sense of general habit formation, so we use this as the habit we chose, but if you guys are stacking anything else on, meditation strengthens the brain's habit loop, which makes it easier to stick to positive behaviors. And again, using that 10-minute threshold, meditation improves adherence to new habits by 60%. We could say up to 60%. So a lot of things going on here, guys. And this is just the one habit we chose. Obviously, we could have gone in a bunch of directions, but this is, in my opinion, a great baseline, a great foundational habit to start with. And the last pillar we're going to dive into, guys, is nutrition. And specific for these numbers, we just kind of correlated it to eating an appropriate amount of calories versus over-consuming, focusing on whole food nutrient-dense options, and increasing fiber intake up to 20 to 40 grams per day. So the first and most obvious one is supporting healthy weight management. Eating an appropriate calorie range helps prevent weight gain, promotes fat loss. For some, let's just call it 500 calories per day, reducing that amount, which could result into, just using the math, and this is going to be a little different for everybody, but 1 to 2 pounds of weight loss per week. And the bonus is that high fiber diets also promote satiety, so reducing hunger and calorie intake by that 10 to 15% mark. Reducing risk of chronic diseases. Nutrient-dense diets lower cholesterol and blood pressure, potentially. Replacing processed foods, highly processed, I'm going to preface, with whole food nutrient-dense options can reduce LDL cholesterol by 15 to 20%. Managing calories and focusing on whole foods can also reduce insulin resistance. High fiber diets reduce type 2 diabetes by 29%. Diets rich in whole plant-based foods, and we're not going to say it's a plant-based diet, but a significant amount of plant-based foods, have been shown to reduce the risk of colorectal cancer by 25 to 50%. Now, I'm going to go through some quick fun facts. I'm not going to read through all these, but high fiber diet reducing the risk of developing diverticulitis by 40%. It's going to improve the gut bacteria, the nourishing the beneficial good stuff, improving microbiome diversity. If you guys are unfamiliar, haven't listened to the podcast in the past, different sources of fiber feed different species of gut microbiota. So when we talk about improving diversity in our gut microbiota, so we talk about, whether you want to focus on colors or plant points, differentiating those things. Each species of gut microbiota has its own superpower. So some type of massively beneficial impact on your health. That's why we want to focus on that diversity and not just stick to the same thing every single day. It's going to also enhance energy and focus. Avoiding those highly processed sugary foods on a regular basis is going to prevent those energy crashes and the brain fog. We want to focus on spacing those meals out. Typically 3 to 4.5 hours is a good marker between each meal. Some cognitive benefits by focusing on omega-3 fatty acids from whole foods like fish and nuts are going to enhance your brain function and focus. When it comes to longevity, following a whole food, some potentially reference point would be like a Mediterranean style diet where it's just diverse in those plant-based, fiber-rich foods, still getting some fish in, some meat in, some protein. That's been linked to a 20% reduction in all-cause mortality. Following a quality diet is also huge in reducing overall inflammation. So whole foods like fruits, veggies, nuts, those are rich in antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. Diets high in processed foods increase markers of inflammation by up to 40%, while whole food diets reduce them by up to 30%. Supporting hormonal balance, nutrient-dense foods like healthy fats, whole grains, those are going to support hormone production and regulation. Consuming omega-3 fatty acids improves cortisol regulation, reduces stress-related hormone imbalances. When it comes to immune function, diets high in processed foods can suppress immunity, while nutrient-rich diets improve response to infections by 20 to 40%. Fiber's role in that, again, we just talked about gut health. Prebiotic fiber improves gut health where 70% of your immune system resides. So a lot of people don't realize that when you have a healthy gut, we're improving all these different areas. So it's not just about gut health and digestion, it's overall health. Circling back to sleep quality, nutrient-dense foods regulate hormones like melatonin and serotonin, which promote sleep. Diets high in processed foods reduce sleep quality, while whole foods improve it by potentially up to 25%. Now, for those of you looking to improve body comp, it's going to help promote muscle growth and recovery. Whole food sources of protein support muscle repair and growth after exercise. It's going to improve muscle protein synthesis, and bringing fiber's role into this, it's going to also help to reduce inflammation through those fiber-rich diets, which enhances recovery over time. So I know we skimmed through that last one pretty quick. You guys know the benefits of eating well. I didn't want to beat the dead horse on that one, but improving your weight, weight management is going to improve all these different markers from metabolic health. But we wanted to give you guys some sexy facts, some fun facts to make the boring a little more intriguing. These are not new concepts. These are just reintroducing those old concepts. We've been talking a lot about moving those bigger rocks, so we wanted to actually quantify that for you. And those were some pretty crazy numbers. I honestly wasn't expecting to see half of them as high as they were. Was things so simple, like moving your body a little bit, focusing on better foods, prioritizing sleep. But those are the foundational pieces, guys. And if we're looking through those to what can I invest in, what pill, what injection, what peptide, what hormone replacement, what X, Y, or Z. If you're not doing these simple things, it doesn't matter. So we do have some resources for you. I will throw in the description. We have the fitness blueprint for busy humans. It's $10. It just walks you through those 5 pillars and gives you some background on them, little correlating stories to bring them into your life and how you can connect those dots on your own. We've also got the app. We've also got coaching. You can find all the details linked in our bio there. Jumping on the site. But this is just, the podcast, guys, this is a free resource. We want to give you guys as many tools as possible. This one, we didn't focus as much on the application. We sprinkled it in there. But without the interest, without the motivation, without the captivating numbers to commit to these things, the application, it just doesn't happen. So we wanted to give you guys those numbers today as far as the crazy statistical improvements across the board when it comes to improving your health, improving your life. So I hope this is eye-opening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you're on Spotify, I think you can comment. Let us know what you thought. If you like this style, we can increase the number of episodes so that it's more stat based and not necessarily just the application and the background stories. So a little different style on this one. What do you guys got?
That's it.
Yeah.
Nail the big rocks. Big rocks.
Hopefully
first.
hopefully this provides clarity as far as what those big rocks are. Like when you hear people say like just focus on the basics and you have no idea what that means, this is what those things are. These are the basics. So
I also kind of just caveat there. I kind of don't like that we call them the basics. They are essentially the foundations, I think is a better almost word. I call them the basics all the time. But the more I think about it, I don't love the term basics because for a lot of people, these don't feel basic. Like if you are not moving and you're not eating well and you're not sleeping well, changing all of that does not feel basic, but they are foundational components of your health. This is the bare minimum of what we should be doing for our health to just maintain our health and not make it worse.
That's literally what you were talking about with Brant. Like this is normal and common speak for those like in our industry.
Yeah.
But you step out of that bubble and it's like, well, what do you mean? What are you talking
We're like,
about?
that's not basic. Like that's not the norm. It's like, no, it's not. But these are not extreme radical tendencies like moving your body, getting enough sleep. This is the bare minimum of what we need to be doing to take care of our bodies. But a lot of times we fall into just the stress of life and parenting and everything else. And it's like, well, can I just take the supplement to help me sleep? Can I just take the fiber supplement? Can I just, do this instead of that? And it's like, probably not. Like you're not going to ashwagandha your way out of, managing your stress, and you're not going to multivitamin your way out of eating a nutrient dense diet, and you're not going to sleeping pill your way out of, better sleep hygiene and sleeping, sleep duration and sleep quality and sleep regularity. They are foundations, but they do still require effort. So I don't want to say basic in the sense that like they're easy. They're not necessarily easy for a lot of people, especially if you're first starting out. But the goal is hopefully A, you realize how much better you feel when these things are in check, and B, they become habitual for you. They become your normal at some point.
So hopefully this episode was eye-opening for you guys. And if you've got an accountability partner or you've been nagging somebody to start making positive changes and to create the health impact, share this episode with them. We do have that 3-episode rule. If you're listening beyond 3 episodes, just leave us a quick 5-star review. If you found it helpful, somebody else probably will as well. As Alessandra talked about in the beginning of the episode, this is, you guys are the most important factor when it comes to expanding the audience. So being able to share that, leave a review, makes a huge impact, and it's helping people change their lives. That's up to you guys. You guys are the glue behind this all. It's why we're here. But we're going to wrap it up. Where can they find you?
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik.
At Joelle Samantha.
At Josh Scott.
Everything else you need is linked in the show notes.